A Japanese torpedo bomber explodes in the air after being hit directly by a 5-inch shell from a U.S. aircraft carrier. During World War II, naval combat in the Pacific was intense, with aircraft playing a crucial role. Japanese torpedo bombers were a significant threat to Allied ships, and the skill of onboard gunners in shooting down these planes was vital for the survival of the aircraft carriers. Sikh prisoners await an untimely death at the hands of their Japanese captors during World War II. The image reflects the brutality of the treatment of prisoners of war by the Japanese, who were widely criticized for their human rights violations. World War II was marked by atrocities committed by all sides, but the harsh treatment of prisoners by Japan was especially notorious. The capture and execution of prisoners were common, and prisoners often faced horrendous conditions of incarceration. A Finnish soldier is about to execute a supposed Soviet spy in Rukkajärvi in November 1942, who is visibly laughing. This event occurred during the Continuation War, when Finland, aligned with Germany, fought against the Soviet Union. The war was marked by intense and brutal conflicts, with both sides committing acts of violence against prisoners. During this period, Finland sought to recover territories lost to the Soviet Union in the Winter War and protect its independence. The USS LSMR-190, Mackay, fires a barrage of rockets off the coast of Tokishima during the Okinawa campaign in 1945. This medium landing ship was sunk by Japanese kamikaze attacks on May 4, 1945, reflecting the intense fighting of the Okinawa campaign. The Okinawa campaign was one of the last and bloodiest battles of the Pacific, with Allied forces facing fierce resistance as they approached Japan. LSR ships were equipped with rockets to support amphibious landings, providing covering fire for the troops advancing on the beaches. During the war, many pilots sought the prestige of aerial combat, but also faced numerous terrors. Technical difficulties and engine failures were common, and those who avoided being shot down in aerial combat still faced the risk of mid-air collisions. Air warfare was relentless, requiring skill, courage, and a bit of luck to survive. Mid-air collisions, like the one depicted in the image of a downed aviator, highlight the constant dangers faced by pilots. Marine Raymond Hubert shaking accumulated sand out of his jar after 3 days of combat, using an unexploded 16-inch naval shell as a resting spot on July 4, 1944. The Marines faced extreme conditions, including intense heat, difficult terrain, and relentless resistance from Japanese forces. As part of the Allies' attempt to liberate the Pacific from Japanese control, an island-hopping strategy was implemented, systematically gaining control of various Japanese-controlled islands. One of these islands was Okinawa. Although the Allies emerged victorious, the victory was hard-fought, and the Japanese insistence on fighting to the end was one of the reasons the atomic bomb was considered necessary. British schoolchildren during an air raid drill taking cover under their desks. The civilian population of Britain lived under the constant threat of bombings, known as the Blitz, conducted by the German Luftwaffe. Schools implemented regular air raid drills to prepare children for bombings. Although protective measures, such as hiding under desks, offered little protection against a direct hit, these drills helped reduce panic and provided a sense of control. Coast Guardsmen on the deck of Cutter Spencer watched the explosion of a depth charge that destroyed a Nazi submarine in 1943. During the war, the Battle of the Atlantic was a crucial campaign to protect Allied convoys from German submarines, known as U-boats. These submarines posed a significant threat, attacking supply ships vital to the Allied war effort. Destroying enemy submarines was essential to ensuring the safety of maritime routes and maintaining the flow of resources between North America and Europe. Escort ships, like the cutter Spencer, played a vital role in detecting and neutralizing U-boats, using depth charges to force the submarines to the surface or destroy them. Marines of the 4th Division attacked from the landing craft on the beach of Iwo Jima, Japan, on March 2, 1945. The Battle of Iwo Jima was one of the bloodiest in the Pacific, where the Marines faced fierce resistance from entrenched Japanese forces. The island of Iwo Jima was strategically important, offering an advanced base for American bombers and a foothold for future operations. The capture of Iwo Jima, symbolized by the famous photo of the flag being raised on Mount Suribachi, was a significant milestone in the Pacific Campaign, demonstrating the courage and determination of the Marines. A French civilian serving cider to a British soldier with a Bren gun in Lisieux, 1944. After the Normandy invasion, Allied troops advanced through France, liberating cities and villages from German control. The local population often provided support and resources to the liberating forces, creating an atmosphere of mutual cooperation and gratitude. Corporal James Gregory holding an M1 Thompson submachine gun, and Technician Omer Taylor smoking a cigarette behind an M4 Sherman tank. They are part of the 36th Armored Infantry of the 9th Division of the 1st United States Army. This scene is recorded on December 11, 1944, in Geitsch, near Düren, North Rhine-Westphalia, Germany, during World War II. The Battle of the Bulge, which took place in this region, was one of the last major German offensives. The soldiers faced harsh conditions with intense cold and constant enemy fire. RN Skipper, Flying Captain Resting. Flight missions often covered a distance of 3,000 miles, resulting in only 4 or 5 attacks per month for the soldiers of the B-24 squadrons in the Darwin area. In between missions, they led a monotonous existence, with official rest time at 3 p.m., although the heat often made it difficult to sleep. The long missions and the wait between them were physically and mentally challenging. Rest was essential for recovery and preparation for the next operations. This daily routine shows how the soldiers sought to maintain a sense of normalcy and balance amid the war. Passengers on a London bus failed to reach a shelter before an air raid. During the Blitz, German bombings were frequent and unpredictable, often catching civilians off guard. Efforts to quickly seek shelter were essential but not always successful due to the speed and intensity of the attacks. Buses, a common means of transportation, became vulnerable in such situations. During air raids, London adults often sought refuge in underground stations. The Blitz bombings forced citizens to find safe shelters, and the depths of the underground stations offered relative security against bombs. The stations turned into temporary underground communities where families and individuals spent hours or even days waiting for the attacks to cease. Life in these shelters was challenging, with cramped conditions and lack of comfort, but they offered essential protection. Thousands of parachutes fill the sky over southern France on August 23, 1944, as troops and equipment are dropped from C-47 planes. This operation was part of the Allied offensive to liberate German-occupied France, landing between Nice and Marseille. Paratrooper operations were essential for securing strategic positions behind enemy lines, facilitating the advance of ground forces. Dropping troops and supplies from transport planes like the C-47 allowed for quick and effective actions in enemy-controlled territory. These operations were risky, with paratroopers facing anti-aircraft fire and the need to quickly reorganize after landing. The liberation of southern France was an important step in pushing back German forces and advancing toward victory in Europe. Parisian women welcomed soldiers from the Allied troops on August 25, 1944, in Paris after the battle for the liberation of Paris. The interaction between the liberating troops and the local population reflects the gratitude and relief at the end of the German occupation. The celebrations and warm receptions symbolize the recognition of the sacrifices made by the soldiers to liberate the city. A battle-weary soldier of George S. Patton's Third Army sleeps in the luxurious bed where Hermann Göring slept. This scene occurred after the capture of one of Göring's refugees, one of the top Nazi leaders, around 1945. The image symbolizes the turnaround in the war, with Allied soldiers occupying the spaces previously held by the upper echelons of the Nazi regime. The luxurious bed contrasts with the exhaustion and conditions faced by the soldiers during the fighting. The capture of the Nazi leader's refugees represented not only a military victory, but also a symbolic blow to the enemy's power and prestige. 2 U.S. Navy dive bombers are ready to dive through thick clouds. They carry bombs to be dropped on Japanese installations on Wake Island. These operations were part of the Allied strategies to retake strategic islands controlled by Japan in the Pacific. Dive bombers played a crucial role in air campaigns, attacking specific targets with precision and causing significant damage to enemy defenses. Soldiers stand in front of the ruins of the large window of the living room of Hitler's mountain retreat in Berchtesgaden, known as the Berghof, around 1945. The Berghof was one of Adolf Hitler's personal refuges and a center of operations during the war. The capture and destruction of this symbolic location represented the fall of the Nazi regime and the end of the war in Europe. The ruins of the Berghof served as a powerful symbol of the defeat and desolation caused by the conflict. An American tank advances with infantry soldiers following its cover in search of Japanese who infiltrated the American lines the previous night in Bougainville, Solomon Islands, March 1944. Coordination between tanks and infantry was crucial to combat the Japanese forces using infiltration tactics. Bougainville Island was a strategic battlefield in the Pacific, and the fighting was intense and prolonged. The soldiers, using the tank as mobile cover, could advance more safely and face the infiltrators more effectively. 2 bomber crew members, Sergeant J. Dickinson from Canada and Sergeant F. Gilks from Trinidad, share a joke while waiting to board their aircraft for an attack on Hamburg in 1943. Bomber crews often faced dangerous missions, and humor was a way to relieve tension before attacks. Allied bombers played a crucial role in the air campaign against Germany, aiming to weaken the enemy's infrastructure and morale. U.S. Coast Guardsmen and Marines built a temporary bridge during the invasion of Cape Gloucester, New Britain. The construction of infrastructure such as bridges was crucial for the advance of troops and the transport of supplies. Military engineering operations ensured that forces could move quickly through difficult terrain and maintain pressure on enemy defenses. The invasion of Cape Gloucester was part of the Allied campaigns to isolate and neutralize Japanese bases. World War II brought a variety of more powerful armaments that caused permanent hearing damage to many soldiers. Industrialized warfare introduced tanks, planes, and artillery that were deafening for both the operator and the target. The constant and intense noise of combat resulted in significant hearing loss for many veterans. Besides physical damage, the psychological impact of the sounds of battle was profound, causing trauma and stress. The image of soldiers exposed to the intense noise of combat underscores the brutal reality of modern warfare. Soldiers of the 2nd Battalion, 165th Infantry Regiment of the 27th Infantry Division of the U.S. Army land on Yellow Beach, Butaritari Island, against defensive fire from Japanese naval troops during the Battle of Makin Atoll on November 20, 1943. This battle was part of the campaign to capture the Gilbert Islands. Amphibious landings on heavily defended islands were complex and risky operations, requiring precise coordination between land, naval, and air units. Soldiers passed the General Post Office building on their way to attack the walled city of Intramuros, February 23, 1945, in Manila, Philippines. The Battle of Manila was one of the last major battles of the Philippine Campaign, resulting in the liberation of the Filipino capital from Japanese control. Urban fighting in Manila was intense and destructive, with Allied soldiers facing strong defenses and traps set by the Japanese. 3 fathers embraced their children at Detroit Central Station in 1943. These fathers are on their way to Fort Custer to prepare for service. The war affected many families who were separated as they had to go to the front lines. Goodbyes at train stations were common as families bid farewell to their loved ones. Squadron 617, Dambusters, in Scampton, Lincolnshire, on July 22, 1943. The Lancaster crew sits on the grass under stormy clouds. This squadron became famous for its precision bombing skills, including the destruction of dams in Germany. The Dambusters' missions required extreme courage and precision, facing considerable dangers to hit strategic targets and cause significant damage to enemy infrastructure. Operation Chastise, one of the best known, involved the use of bouncing bombs to destroy the Ruhr dams, causing devastating floods. Black members of a U.S. Navy division serve in Iwo Jima, demonstrating the crucial and often under-recognized participation of African American troops during World War II. African American Marines played important roles in various capacities, from direct combat to logistical support. Racial segregation was a reality in the U.S. Armed Forces, but the courage and effort of these soldiers contributed significantly to the war effort. Women compete in a suspended bar race as part of their physical training at Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia. The Women's Army Auxiliary Corps was established during World War II to allow women to serve in non-combat roles. The rigorous training included intense physical exercises to ensure that the women were prepared for the demands of military service. Women were trained for various roles, including communications, administration, and logistical support. The Battle of Suicide Ridge on Peleliu Island involved Marines using rifle grenades, throwing hand grenades, and Molotov cocktails to fight entrenched Japanese in caves. Peleliu was one of the toughest battles in the Pacific, with rugged terrain and well-fortified defenses. The fight to capture Suicide Ridge highlighted the ferocity and determination of both sides. The Marines faced fierce resistance, with the Japanese defenders using the terrain to their maximum advantage. The battle resulted in heavy casualties, but was crucial for Allied control of the region. A British soldier in battle dress kneels in prayer during an intercession service for France, held at Westminster Cathedral, London, on June 14, 1940. This service reflected the sense of solidarity and hope of the Allied forces during the dark moments of the war. The German invasion of France and the fall of Paris were devastating blows to the Allies, and moments of prayer and reflection were ways to seek strength and solace. After the atomic bomb, Little Boy, was dropped on Hiroshima, 4.7 square miles of the city were destroyed, with buildings reduced to irreparable rubble. The intensity of the explosion started fires that quickly consumed everything around. The devastation was nearly total, leaving few buildings standing. The resulting fires worsened the destruction, hindering rescue efforts and causing more deaths. The image of the ruined city shows the immediate and lasting impact of the attack, reflecting the new and terrifying reality of nuclear warfare. The destruction of Hiroshima led to Japan's surrender and the end of World War II, but also raised ethical questions about the use of nuclear weapons. 3 days after Hiroshima, the atomic bomb Fat Man was dropped on Nagasaki on August 9, 1945. Although it was a more powerful bomb, Nagasaki's terrain helped reduce some of the consequences. The impact was devastating, but the mountainous terrain limited the area of destruction. The decision to drop the second bomb was controversial, with many questioning its necessity. However, the bombing hastened Japan's surrender, ending the war. The image of Nagasaki after the bombing shows the extent of the devastation, with buildings destroyed and widespread fires. Not during the Battle of Midway, Japanese dominance in the Pacific was finally challenged. From June 3 to 7, 1942, just 6 months after the attack on Pearl Harbor, the U.S. delivered a decisive blow against Japan, destroying 4 aircraft carriers, a heavy cruiser, and 248 Japanese aircraft. Approximately 3,057 Japanese were killed during the campaign, compared to only 307 Americans. The victory at Midway was a crucial turning point in the Pacific War, allowing the U.S. to take an offensive stance. Infantry soldiers advanced under enemy fire during the Ardennes-Alsace campaign at the Battle of the Bulge in 1945. The Battle of the Bulge was a desperate German effort to break Allied lines in the harsh winter of the Ardennes. Combat conditions were extremely difficult, with deep snow, freezing temperatures, and dense forests. The Allied soldiers had to quickly adapt to the adverse conditions, using infiltration and ambush tactics to fight the German offensive. A group of American soldiers gather around a piano and sing a song on Monteglis Street on August 10, 1944. The soldiers on the right wear the insignia of the 2nd Armored Division of the U.S. Army, which had just arrived in Barenton, Normandy, France. These moments of relaxation were common among Allied troops during the liberation of France. The 2nd Armored Division played a crucial role in the liberation operations, advancing through Normandy and facing strong German resistance. A member of the Cavalry Reconnaissance Squadron checks a .30 caliber machine gun during the Ardennes-Alsace campaign at the Battle of the Bulge in 1945. The Battle of the Bulge was one of the largest and bloodiest battles fought by the United States during World War II. American troops faced a surprise offensive from German forces in the Ardennes with intense fighting and severe weather conditions. A German patrol explores the Egyptian desert during a sandstorm, known as Ghibli, in El Alamein, September 1942. The Battle of El Alamein was one of the decisive battles of the Western Desert, where Allied forces under General Montgomery defeated Axis troops. Desert combat involved unique challenges, including extreme temperatures, inhospitable terrain, and sandstorms that hindered visibility and communication. American soldiers of the 503rd Parachute Ski Battalion rest in sleeping bags in the snow after training in mountainous terrain. This battalion was part of a group specialized in combat operations in cold and mountainous environments, prepared to fight in adverse conditions. The training included hiking and skiing to ensure readiness for any war scenario. Operations in mountainous terrain required specific skills, including the ability to move quickly through deep snow and steep terrain. The soldiers of the 503rd Battalion were trained to use specialized equipment and survival techniques in cold climates. U.S. soldiers aboard landing craft approaching Omaha Beach, Normandy, France. The landing on Omaha Beach was part of Operation Overlord, the Allied invasion of Normandy on June 6, 1944. Omaha Beach was one of 5 landing sectors and faced the strongest resistance from German defenses. The soldiers faced heavy fire, mines, and obstacles as they landed and advanced across the beach. An American crew operating a 75 mm Pack Howitzer M1 to defend the Torokina airfield on Bougainville Island, Papua New Guinea, in 1943. This airfield was crucial for Allied operations in the Pacific, serving as a base for bombers and fighter planes. Defending strategic airfields was vital to maintaining air control over the region and supporting ground and naval operations. The battles in Papua New Guinea were intense and marked by difficult terrain, adverse weather, and strong Japanese resistance. Red Army troops attack an apartment building amid the war-devastated ruins of Stalingrad in 1941. The Battle of Stalingrad was one of the most brutal conflicts of World War II and marked a turning point in the war against Nazi Germany. Urban fighting in Stalingrad was intense, with soldiers battling street by street and building by building. Soviet resistance, combined with the harsh winter and the exhaustion of German forces, led to the eventual defeat of the 6th German Army. The German Luftwaffe, led by Hermann Göring, was a powerful air force during the war, devastating London in the Battle of Britain. However, the British carried out retaliatory bombings, such as the attack on Abbeville Aerodrome in German-occupied France. The image of British bombers flying over Abbeville symbolizes Allied resistance and counteroffensives. Destroying enemy air bases was crucial to ensuring air superiority and protecting Allied territories. The legendary Battle of Guadalcanal, codenamed Operation Watchtower, was fought on the island of Guadalcanal in the Pacific between August 1942 and February 1943, marking the first major offensive against the Japanese by the Allies. Until then, the Allies had employed a Europe-first strategy, focusing on stopping the rapid expansion of German-controlled territory. However, it became clear that Japanese control in the Pacific also posed a significant threat. The victories in Guadalcanal and New Guinea were crucial in halting the Japanese advance. In London, on July 30, 1944, an English soldier rescues a girl named Barbara James from the ruins of her home after a series of air raids. German air raids, known as the Blitz, caused extensive destruction and loss of life in British cities. The Blitz was a sustained bombing campaign by the Luftwaffe, targeting industrial cities and population centers to break British morale and disrupt war production. London, as the main target, suffered almost daily attacks during the most intense periods. Infantry soldiers of the 1st U.S. Army moved silently through the snow-covered forests of Krenkelter, Belgium, during the Nazi counteroffensive on the 1st Army Front in December 1944. The Battle of the Bulge was one of the last major German offensives in World War II. The American troops faced adverse conditions, including cold weather and difficult terrain, while trying to repel the enemy advance. The fighting in the Ardennes was intense, with hand-to-hand combat and tactical maneuvers amid the snow and dense forests. Civilians waved to French tanks in the streets of Paris during the liberation in 1944. The liberation of Paris was a symbolic and significant moment in World War II, representing the defeat of the Nazi regime and the return of freedom. The Free French forces, along with Allied troops, played a crucial role in the liberation of the capital. A vertical aerial photograph taken during a daylight attack on an oil storage depot in Bec-d'Ambay, France. An Avro Lancaster of No. 514 Squadron RAF flies over the target area as dense clouds of smoke rise when bombs explode among the oil storage tanks on August 4, 1944. Allied bombings aimed to weaken German industrial infrastructure by disrupting fuel supplies. Bombing missions were dangerous, with crews facing anti-aircraft fire and enemy fighters. Approximately 3 of the 7 weeks of the U.S. Marine recruits training course at Parris Island are spent at the rifle range. The future Marines are trained in the use of weapons and undergo advanced instruction in combat work and bayonet practice. The recruits perform calisthenics under arms to strengthen their physical endurance and combat readiness. This rigorous training is essential to ensure that the Marines are ready to face the harsh realities of combat. A Russian soldier waits in his trench while a Russian T-34 tank tries to gain a better position during the Battle of Kursk between German and Soviet forces in July and August 1943. The Battle of Kursk was one of the largest tank battles in history, involving hundreds of armored vehicles in intense combat. The T-34, one of the most effective tanks of the war, played a crucial role in Soviet resistance and the eventual defeat of German forces. Soldiers of the 331st Infantry Regiment, 83rd Infantry Division of the 1st U.S. Army, cross a road to take cover from enemy fire in the bocage hedgerows near the village of Perrier during the Normandy campaign on July 21, 1944. The bocage hedgerows provided natural cover, but also hindered troop advancement. The tactic of using the hedgerows as cover was essential for survival, allowing the soldiers to move more safely and prepare ambushes against enemy forces. American actor Clark Gable, serving as an artillery instructor in the U.S. Army Air Forces, handles a gun aboard an aircraft in 1943 somewhere in England. Gable, a Hollywood star, enlisted after the death of his wife Carol Lombard and used his fame to inspire and train other soldiers. He served in Europe, contributing to the war effort with his experience and leadership. Gable participated in combat and training missions, demonstrating that even celebrities were willing to be directly involved in the conflict. During bombings, cities often experienced blackouts, where all houses eliminated all light to make it difficult for enemy aircraft to locate targets. However, light was inevitable when anti-aircraft fire, such as that seen over Algiers, lit up the sky. Blackouts were a crucial defensive measure, but anti-aircraft artillery fire momentarily revealed the location of defenses, creating constant tension between protecting the population and fighting the enemy. The image of anti-aircraft fire lighting up the sky over Algiers shows the intensity of air battles and the vulnerability of cities under attack. The atomic bomb Little Boy was dropped on Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, causing unprecedented devastation. The decision to use the bomb was based on the belief that a land invasion of Japan would result in even more deaths. The explosion destroyed 4.7 square miles of the city, starting fires that consumed everything in their path. Hiroshima was chosen as a target due to its military and industrial importance. The destruction was swift and absolute, with thousands of lives lost instantly, and many more suffering the effects of radiation. The image of the devastation in Hiroshima illustrates the destructive power of the atomic bomb and its horrific consequences, marking one of the darkest moments in human history. An RAF Lancaster bomber flies over Hamburg during a bombing mission in World War II. Hamburg was the target of intense Allied bombings, especially during Operation Gomorrah in 1943, which resulted in the destruction of much of the city and caused many civilian casualties. The bombings aimed to weaken Nazi Germany's industrial and military infrastructure and undermine the population's morale. Residents of Leningrad near an unexploded German air bomb during the siege of Leningrad. The people around observed the enormous explosive device, a constant reminder of the imminent danger amid the long and brutal siege that lasted from 1941 to 1944. The presence of the unexploded bomb in the city streets demonstrates the daily risks faced by the citizens during one of the most devastating sieges in history. A recently liberated Russian prisoner from the Buchenwald concentration camp by the United States Army, identifying a German guard accused of brutality against the detainees. In the image, the prisoner is directly pointing at the guard. This moment represents one of the many immediate confrontations of justice that occurred after the liberation of the Nazi concentration camps, where victims had the chance to directly confront those who had persecuted them. 2 soldiers, one on each side, and a donkey in the center, all equipped with gas masks. This image symbolizes the extreme protective measures adopted during conflicts, where even animals were equipped with masks to protect against chemical attacks, a common warfare tactic.